Hi, welcome. We are doing a Tuesday live decluttering focused or home routines focused Q&A. I am Dana K. White. I am the author of several books, including Decluttering at the Speed of Life, How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. And somewhere around here is Organizing for the Rest of Us. I think it's on the top shelf. Anyway, I'm excited that you're here. So what I do in these live Q&As, I answer questions that have been submitted ahead of time at askdanakWhite.com. That's me. If you go there to askdanakWhite.com, then there's a form that you can fill out. These are not real-time questions, okay? So I think I'm going to answer 4 questions from this, and then in the last half of our time today, I will take questions from those who are asking live, who are watching live, okay? So I will get to live questions at the end. Just a reminder, though, that I have several ways for you to connect with other people who can speak this language, the way that we talk about decluttering, because the way that we talk about decluttering around here is different than most people talk about it, okay? If you like the language that we speak about decluttering, I highly recommend that you consider joining our Patreon. That is a place where you can connect with other people who are following these same strategies in their homes. Lovely, kind people. And they're very helpful to one another. So it kind of gives you somewhere to talk through and get feedback when we're talking about decluttering this way, right? Like, because how many of you have been in a just general decluttering situation or group, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do the take it there now. And people are like, what are you talking about? No, we all know what the take it there now is there. Okay. And just a reminder too, that if you need someone to personally help you, declutteringcoaches.com. That's my website with coaches who are trained by me and certified by me. The ones who are listed there have been successfully through my training. So, all right. Yay. Lots of people here. This is awesome. Okay, here we go. I'm going to answer the first question. How to part with semi-precious jewelry. Oh yeah, I like to read the entire actual question, although I think this is actually it. How to part with semi-precious jewelry. I have difficulty letting that go for free, but I'm not wearing it. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go into a couple of different things with this. First of all, if you're not wearing it, is the money the issue or is it sentimental? Blaming the space is a great way to let go of things that you might not otherwise let go of, even if they're sentimental. If sentimental is the issue, say, this is the amount of space that I have to devote to jewelry I don't wear. Sometimes just that sentence alone will trigger in you, oh, wait, I don't want to give space to something I don't wear. Okay, it needs to go. All right. So if that's the sentimental thing, or if it's sentimental and, it was your grandmother's or whatever, or you even just the sentiment of, I saved up and spent money on this at a certain time in my life. I'm not willing to just let it go, because of all the memories attached, giving it a space that you say, okay, this small portion of this drawer is what I'm designating to this. And then I put my favorite things in there first. That naturally sorts out what you really, really love and what you don't love so much. And but you always acknowledge that it can't take up room that I need for my everyday life, whether that's the things I actually wear or the, kitchen utensils that I need. Because I'm just saying, like, there are those of us who have these struggles who keep all these things we can't imagine letting go of at the expense of having room to put our potato masher that we actually use on a regular basis. You'll know I don't, because I use instant mashed potatoes, but you know what I mean, right? Like, that is, that's just a way of sorting out and giving yourself a very concrete way to let go of things. But let's talk about the money issue here, because you did specifically say, I have difficulty letting that go for free, but I'm not wearing it. Here's my main thing with items that you're holding on to because you just don't want to give it away. I'm like, keeping something in your house that you don't want is the one thing that's not an option. I mean, it's an option. Obviously, you do whatever you want to do. But like if you're wanting to have a decluttered home, it's not, you can't just keep things in your house that you don't want to. So it's like, if the idea that I don't want to let this go for free is the thing holding me back, then sell it, right? Like that, because so many times it's an issue. I don't want to let it go for free. And so you say, okay, well then sell it. Well, I'm never going to sell it. Okay, well then let it go for free, because it shouldn't. None of us, I have decided for me, it's not okay for me to just leave it in my house if I want it to go and there's just some hang up that's keeping me from letting it go. Okay. But with that, that can be very overwhelming, right? Because you're like, well, if one of the reasons I don't sell it is I don't know how to sell it. I don't know what to do. Pick one thing, pick one item that you are most confident either for actual value or current fashion trends or whatever. You're the most confident. Oh, that right there, that really, that's the one that's worth money. Okay, pick it and go through the process. Go through the process. I have a video recently where I talk about how to find out how much things actually sell for on eBay, just to give you an idea of actual value out there in the world. Not that you're going to sell it on eBay, right? But go through the process with that item. Maybe that process is going to a jeweler who buys jewelry. Maybe it's just do it for the thing that you're most confident really does have value. And that experience is what is going to change your mind. It's either going to help you realize, okay, now I know what to do. Now I can get this stuff out of my house. Or it's going to make you realize that was a lot of work. I didn't get what I thought I was going to get for that. But either way, you're going to be able to get it out because you either decided it wasn't worth my time and effort and now I can donate it, or now I know what to do to actually get what I feel like I've got to get to be able to let go of it. Either way, it's out of your house. Okay. But the thing you don't want to do is just leave it in your house, right? Like that's where I had to come to a decision and say, if I am convinced that I need to make money on this item, then I've got to do it. And 9 times out of 10 saying, okay, well then I've got to do it, made me realize, oh, I'm never going to do that. But just sitting there having the angst over it, that's where, but the stuff is still in your house, making you frustrated with your house and making you not able to function and live. Okay. There you go. That's my answer. But like so many times, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I do the thing where I'm like, oh, I've been thinking about this for years. And I'm like, that place that has a big sign that says we buy jewelry, just saying, I'm going to stop by there. I'm going to take a handful of this stuff and I am going to stop by there. I'm going to work it into my schedule. And doing that is like, that was so much easier than I expected. I mean, I don't want to use up my content for a video that we'll have next year, but like my husband and I, we're going to do a video on, finally figuring out, we'd heard about that, our town that doesn't have recycling, we'd heard about this place where you could take boxes for recycling. And so we'd been saving them and saving them and saving them. And it was this like, but what do we do? And okay, well, so-and-so does it. And they say it's not hard and blah, blah. But as long as we hadn't done it yet, then the boxes piled up, right? And they stayed in the house and they were in the garage and they were a huge frustration. But it was like, once we did it, once we went through that, okay, I'm forcing myself to do this thing that felt weird and scary and unknown and all that. Now it's like, oh, well, now I know what to do. Okay. Like it is incredibly freeing to just say, I'm going to do this one time. Okay. And with semi-precious stuff, that might be the very best thing for you to do, unless you don't have access to something like that. And in which case you need to figure out another way, because you've got to do something that works in your house. Because another thing a lot of us can do is be like, well, if I lived in a big city that had places, jewelry stores that bought jewelry from people, well, then I could. But if I don't live in a big city, then I think the word is moot, right? That's moot. I love that word. wish I knew for sure I was using it correctly here, but like MOOT, it's a great word, right? Like that, it's a non-issue. Like this is not, it's not a thing. And yet so many of us are like, but in the ideal world, but I don't live in an ideal world. I have to deal with the actual world, the actual energy I have, the actual time that I have. That's what I have to deal in. Okay. Oh, that got a little preachy. I'm not checking comments. I don't want to know what y'all think. All right. I'm just kidding. I'll look at them later. What kind of system? Oh, let me read the whole question here. My assistant goes through and she does like a abbreviated version to be able to fit onto those. But anyway, I like to read the whole thing. What kind, it may be the same thing. What kind of system categorizing do you use organizing your business documents, digital and paper? Also, do you have a separate phone and computer for your business? Lastly, what business tools have you found to be very effective, like this Google Docs form that I'm filling out? Okay. So I have an online business, primarily online, right? And so I am basically like, I have to do everything online. And I've learned that the hard way, y'all. Okay. Random confessions, embarrassing things. I don't know if I've ever told this. Should I really tell this live on YouTube? But anyway, years ago, like early on, when I was like, I want to be a writer, I have this blog and I was making these contacts and I was writing for an actual, I'm not going to say what it was, but anyway, an actual company that was kind of an old school company. And they needed me to send in actual physical invoices. And I just never got paid. I just never got paid. I guess I did it for free. My brain, I was earning money, but I wasn't actually earning money because I never said. And so after that, I realized, okay, well, that's part of how I make a decision about what I'm going to do. Am I going to be able to do this all digitally? Because if I can do it digitally, I'll get it done. If I have to do it in physical, actual pieces of paper, it's never going to happen. So obviously there are still some physical pieces of paper, but I try to minimize that as much as possible. With the physical pieces of paper that I do have, I use my same process. Where would I look for it first? And then having a defined space within that. I like colored file folders. And generally, I can get through an entire year's worth of actual physical papers for my business in one colored file folder, because everything else is digital, right? Because I try to keep everything digital. As far as like having a separate computer, I do have a computer out here in my office. That kind of ended up being something that just happened, like we kind of happened on an extra computer, which is weird, but anyway. And I love having a separate one out here. I do have a laptop that I carry back and forth to the house that allows me to be able to do some things there. But as far as like the last part of the question that's not here on the thing was business tools that you found to be effective, like the Google Docs form that she's filling out at askdannykwhite.com. Oh my word. Google Docs, Google Forms. Do y'all know that people fill out a form and then it puts all the information into a spreadsheet for you? It's the greatest thing ever. I would say Google Sheets, which is spreadsheets, is my favorite thing ever. I use that for all kinds of stuff anytime. And I don't use it for like formulas. I know there are other people who are like, oh, do you know how to use spreadsheets? And I'm like, probably not the way you do. I use it to organize information all the time. So keeping things together, anybody who works for me knows I love my Google spreadsheets. Like, for example, for podcast ads, we have a spreadsheet, and, I started with a different company and they were like, well, we can show you kind of what some of our podcasters use to set up a spreadsheet. And they saw ours. They're like, oh, you're fine. You're good. We have a system. And I'm like, and I'll add to it. I'll be like, hey, can you start putting this information in this column each time? And so it just keeps everything together, because that's very helpful, because it gives me a place where I would look for it first, right? So yeah, I mean, I won't go into all of that, but the reason that I like Google Sheets is that I can share them with the different people who, contribute to, so like my podcast ads spreadsheet, I have access, my assistant who actually deals with all the back and forth and stuff with the ad copy and things like that. She has access, the editor has access, and everybody can see what everybody's doing in one place. So yeah, I know this isn't really something that necessarily applies to everybody, except that I will say Google Forms are the best thing ever. and they're free. And if you do anything, if you organize anything, and I know that those of us who struggle with clutter tend to be the type of people to organize large groups of things. So if you are a room mom, or if you are a teacher, if you are a, you organize events at your church or whatever, Google Forms are your best friend, because it keeps all the information in one place. It puts the ball in other people's courts. You send them the link to the form, they fill out their information, and you have it all in a spreadsheet that it makes for you like magic. It's the best thing ever. Okay, I'll stop talking about that. All right. Can you tell us some, oh, I'm going to read the whole question. I keep forgetting today. Wait, this is out of order. Oh, well. Can you tell us some creative ways to turn sentimental clutter into things we can display or use? Example, I paid an Etsy artist to turn my maternal grandfather's shirt and my paternal grandfather's towel into a stuffed rabbit for my daughter. How adorable. I have been thinking of creating scrapbooks with the sentimental clutter I'm keeping, but I'm hoping to hear other ideas. Okay, so the reason I'm answering this one is because I have to come up with this I have to answer this from my perspective as the person who used to see every idea that existed for turning your clutter into something amazing. And I would see those ideas and I would be like, oh my word, that is amazing. I am going to do that someday. That is on my list now. It's on my list. I got it. I am totally going to do that. And I would keep everything because of all the things that I had seen that I could maybe do something with it eventually. And then because of all the things I hadn't seen yet, but I probably would see eventually, that would be a way to use this. Okay. So I am going to answer this from that perspective, with decluttering being the goal. Okay. Because if decluttering isn't the goal, if the goal is just to make cool stuff out of your clutter, then there's no reason to get stuff out of the house. And if you don't get stuff out of the house, your house is not going to change. You're not going to be able to manage your home more. Okay. So more easily. And my goal is to manage my home more easily. So on this, what do I do? Well, when I see an idea, I attempt that I love, that's like, oh my word, this is amazing. I attempt to do it right then. Like, that's a great idea. I'm going to go do that. And then I go and I shop from what I have. Doing that a few times will help you to be able to let things go in the future. Okay. So think of it as, when I see these ideas that I really want to do, I'm going to have stuff I can use, right? Like, so I'm going to shop from what I have, as opposed to I'm going to hold on to things for ideas that I'm going to do in the future. Okay. So it's that it's basically the take it there now. I'm going to go ahead and do this idea now, because so many times it either helps me realize, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't really want to do that. That's going to take more time than I was thinking. Or I do one thing and I think, yeah, that looks janky and I am not good at this. And so it gives me a more realistic picture of what I could do in the future. So I'm just saying, like, this mindset shift. The other thing too with this, and this is something that I have, and I mean, obviously sometimes you do, especially like t-shirt quilts. This is one of everybody's favorite things, right? Is a t-shirt quilt. Like, what do I do with all my kids or my t-shirts from, college? I mean, I remember even back in the 90s, there was a t-shirt for every single event that happened at college. I can only imagine now what that's like, right? And so it's always been this, oh, but am I going to throw away all these memories? And what am I going to, okay, t-shirt quilts. People love that idea. That's great. What you need to do, if that's your idea, and that's the reason that you're saving your t-shirts, is go ahead and do the research. How many t-shirts can go on a t-shirt quilt? Because the t-shirt quilt is your actual container, right? Like, that is it. If a t-shirt quilt, and this is me saying without having any idea, but let's say 20, like I wanted to say 16 or 32, I'm just gonna say 20. If you do the research and find out that the size of t-shirt quilt that you actually would want needs 20 t-shirts. That's your container. You pick your favorite out of what you already have, because you probably already have some. You pick your favorite 20. You don't hold on to every t-shirt with this idea that at some point in the future, I'm going to do a t-shirt quilt. Instead, you pick your favorite 20 out of what you've got and you say, these are the best 20. And then if more t-shirts come in, then you'll need to one in, one out, because what you don't want to do is just have a vague idea of this really cool thing that you're going to do with your clutter in the future. And so you hold on to everything so you'll have what you need, what you think you might need, okay? Or you'll have all the options, whatever. So it's that going ahead and acting on things and then doing this. And I just want to say the reason I'm not giving very specific ideas here, I do share things like I shared on Instagram over Christmas, our Christmas tree. One of my favorite ornaments is one of my husband's childhood friends bought my husband's dad, my father-in-law's big machine. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, he had a lot of big machines. That thing was so heavy, it was crazy. But he bought it and he totally made it gorgeous. Like he uses it now for himself. But he took one of the pieces from it and turned it into a Christmas ornament and sent it to us. So many memories, all the feelings about, my father-in-law and the love that he had for doing his, his crafts that he did. I mean, he was basically an artist, he was a welder, and all those feelings in this beautiful, quirky, fun Christmas ornament. Okay. But the reason I don't make it part of my job to share with you really cool ways to use your clutter, I'll share them when they come along, but it's because I often think I could have gone that direction. I could have created a business around repurposing my junk, because that sounds so fun to me. Like, especially used to sound so fun to me, except that it sounded so fun that I kept so much stuff that I was so overwhelmed that I could never actually do the thing or all the other things I wanted to do in life. And so I just make it a point that that's not what I do here. It's not that I refuse to share it. It's just not what I do. Does it make sense? What was I going to talk about? I feel like I had something else to say on this one. Oh, the other thing too is as you're decluttering, this is a great, so go ahead and declutter. As you declutter, sometimes, you're always asking yourself, where would I look for this first? Well, you don't not ask that question if it's something sentimental, right? You still ask yourself that question about everything. And if it's something like, well, this has no value in my actual everyday life, I'm not going to use it. For example, my kids' cowboy boots. Y'all, baby cowboy boots are the cutest things that have ever been worn by anyone ever. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm sure there's other cute things, but like, I love a baby cowboy boot. Like, whoo, I'm feeling all the feelings. I mean, like, I have so many memories because my kids could pull on cowboy boots long before they could ever tie a shoe, and so they could get themselves dressed, and boy, did they look funny and adorable. And so I have all these feelings. Well, what do I, running across baby cowboy boots or toddler cowboy boots as you are decluttering, and you're like, I put them on a shelf and they just became, decor. Cause I'm like, okay, so whatever it is, use it. Where would I look for this first? Applies. Either it can't possibly be decor, and instead it's going to be in a memory box or a keepsake box or whatever you call it. That's a definite space that you take it there now. And if there's not room for it, you have to remove something, or you realize I'm not willing to remove something, and so this needs to go. Or say, okay, this could be a great decoration. I'm going to go ahead and stick it on my wall. I know there are a lot of people who will say, oh, I don't want to put the holes in my wall until I'm absolutely sure. And yet, like if it's something to hang up, and yet, if you don't do that, then it's still clutter, right? But once it goes on the wall, even if it's imperfectly, not in the exact perfect best decorator style spot, it's done. It's done. It can be fixed and it can be adjusted, but it's done. It's not clutter anymore. Okay. So going ahead and using things as you come across them. feel a little rambly today. Anyway, okay. Let's see. Last one for these, and then I'll take questions from the audience. That was me talking weird. How do you manage your to-do list and your extended want to do to-do list? I feel like there are so many projects and items, goals that I get overwhelmed and disorganized at times. I actually have a video coming out. I don't think it's come out yet. I recorded all my videos last summer, and so they're all scheduled out for the year. I think it has not come out yet, specifically about to-do lists. So with this, what I will say is that I don't make a daily, and I'll say this in the video, I don't make a daily, all the things I'm going to do in my house to-do list. I know there are people who love doing that. It backfires on me every single time. I needed to have it boiled down to, these are the things that have to be done or the house does not run. Okay. Do the dishes, sweep the kitchen, which is really about picking stuff up off the floor. It's not so much about the crumbs. Check bathrooms for clutter, meaning they're not just a disaster and they can be cleaned easily when they need to be, but the task is check them for clutter and do a 5-minute pickup. If I will do those things, and they are boiled down so far to 4 basic things that I don't need a checklist for. And I also don't recommend that you start out with those 4 things. I start out with doing the dishes until doing the dishes is something that you don't have to think through. What am I supposed to do today? You're like, well, I always have to do the dishes. Okay. Not that you're going to be excited about it, but going, those 4 things, I don't want them to have to be written down. I need them to be so simple that they don't have to be written down. And if I will just do those 4 things, if I will just do the dishes and a 5-minute pickup, my house keeps out of crazy talk town, right? So I don't do a huge, because here's what would happen when I would be like, my house is a disaster. Oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to make a to-do list. That's what all the organized people do. I'm going to make a to-do list. My to-do list, I would be looking around at all the millions of things that I could and should and would in a perfect world do. And my list was 3 pages long and completely overwhelming, or it was time to go do something else by the time I'd finished writing down the list of all the things I should do. So instead, I have it boiled down to, if I can't do anything else, I'm going to do the dishes. If nothing else can happen, if I don't have time, if I don't have energy, if I don't whatever, I'm just going to do the dishes, or I'm going to do as much of the dishes as I can. And knowing that is key. And then I use lists for projects. Okay. Like my kids actually love it, but I love, like, when we're having, we're having, family over for Easter brunch or whatever. I have my little lists for each person in the family, including myself. And I write down, I need you to do this. And everybody really, they say they won't read snide remarks in the credits on this video about to-do lists, because he's talking about those. But they do. I mean, I actually have one kid who was like, I like it when you make these lists because then I just know what I'm supposed to do and I get it. So I'm like, but projects, I'm big on lists for breaking down the steps to a project. But as far as everyday to-do list, it backfires. Anyway, for the reasons that I have shared. Okay, I am going to go into the comments, and I'm going to say this real quick. I'm going to go into the comments and respond to questions. If you have already asked a question, it would not be a bad idea for you to, what was I going to say? Oh, for you to rewrite the question in the comments and to put 3 question marks at the front of it so I can make sure I see it. I see a QQQ. I'll get to that in just a second. I did want to say this real quick though. This is true, but the problem for a lot of us is that we have TPAD, which is time passage awareness disorder, which is totally made up by me, even though I have heard from lots of people that there is an actual, disorder. Might have to do with ADHD that other people diagnose me with all the time. But anyway, so yes, but also some of us imagine something's going to take 10 minutes when it would really only take 2 minutes. So just using that as a judgment thing, sometimes it helps. I have a video that I did in the fall, or that went out in the fall, of timing how long things take for me to get an So instead of me saying, well, I'm going to do this because it's only going to take 2 minutes, I'm like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to time myself so I know how long it takes. So in the future, it'll be easier. Okay. How can I tell my brain to remember I decluttered something? Books. I sometimes look for books that I have decluttered because I still see the picture of it in my mind. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. It really is tough. I will say though, I mean, not that this doesn't happen. This still happens to me some, but it happened the more my house got under control and I didn't have excess stuff shoved and piled. I experienced this less and less because my house, I could handle my house. Clutter threshold is the amount of stuff that you personally can easily keep under control, right? And so once I hit my clutter threshold, it's like, I didn't have this, like, I know such and such is, I've probably got that somewhere. And that used to be my constant, right? Like, I know I have something, and I just had a better awareness of what I had. The books that I kept stayed on the bookshelf, fit on the bookshelf. I could see them. And so I didn't just have like piles and boxes and stuff of books everywhere that I'm like, oh, did I have that or not? Should I go through it? So it's like really coming down to actually living in the actual space and embracing the containers that you have does help with this. So as far as how can I tell my brain, I think your brain is going to accept this much more when you get, so keep on decluttering, acknowledge that sometimes there's decluttering regret, and yet keep going, because the more your house is down to only what really fits usably, comfortably, manageably for you and your personality and your brain, then the less often that this happens. Okay. You often say final decision by final decision. Could you elaborate on this? I find that I take my time, 10 minutes several times, to have time to think about what I found in the drawer. Okay, it sounds like you're re-decluttering, which is great, right? Or maybe you're saying that you look at the drawer and then come back. Whatever you need to do, that's fine. But remember that the trash step, if what you're doing is looking at the drawer and then leaving and thinking about it and then coming back to it, remember that there's a 5-step process which builds upon itself. It builds you into this final decision thing. Okay, so you're not just opening the drawer and saying, I've got to make final decisions about each and everything. That's not what we're doing. Instead, we're starting with the trash. Trash is a final decision. It's a very easy, non-emotional final decision that's not really a decision you have to make, right? You're just identifying trash. And so you're saying, what in this space is trash? I'm going to take it out and I'm going to act on it by putting it in the trash bag. Meaning I never have to touch, think about, look at this thing again, right? So I do that. And then as I'm doing the trash, my brain is adjusting. So what you're talking about, the thinking about what you found in the drawer, that's happening as I am dealing with the trash. And if I step away, I've made progress, right? So like as I was sitting there thinking and adjusting to what's in the drawer, I've already gotten some stuff out. And so next time I go and look at it, it's less overwhelming to me, right? And then I do easy stuff, which is nothing hard. It's nothing to think about. It is simply what is in this space that actually belongs in a different space that's already established. And for whatever reason, it's in here. And I take that stuff out and I go do that. Okay. And then the next one is donation. So those first 3 steps have no decisions to be made, have no emotional energy to be spent. And yet I am significantly reducing the amount of stuff in this space as my brain is adjusting to what's in here. So that by the time I get to the decluttering questions, I have made adjustments and I have significantly improved this drawer at the same time. Okay. So I think what you're saying, the following the process in order achieves that. Okay. Okay. Y'all got some great questions. I keep seeing them and then I'm like, wait, what? There was a question I wanted to, here we go. Is it ever appropriate to ask question 2 before question 1? I just joined. Sorry if you answered this already. Okay. You do what you want to do. If that is what is helpful for you, then that's great. Here's why I don't do this. And everything that I teach is based on what works for me consistently, for sure, every time. Okay. I don't always remember what I have. And so, for those who are new, question 1 is, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Question 2, I only ask myself if I can't answer question number 1. And then I ask question number 2, which is, what if I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? Well, I am very forgetful. I don't love that about myself. It's actually something that drives me crazy about myself. Like, I get frustrated with that. I'm less forgetful the more under control my house, has gotten. But then at the same time, I'm older. So, anyway. So for me, if I'm just saying, did I remember I had this? I'd be like, I'm not that kind of person, right? Like, I have to have steps, and I would resist if I just said, did I remember I had this? It's got to go. I'm like, no, but. Okay. So asking myself the first question allows me to be very realistic. Okay. So it's not that here I'm like, okay, this is what I forgot to take home from my office yesterday, and I was irritated with myself. Anyway, have y'all, okay. I think we got the Ninja little smoothie maker thing. That is the coolest thing ever. Anyway, not an advertisement, but so this is for my smoothie from yesterday. Okay. So let's say that I came up with this. I'm like, it might be my reaction to be like, I had another one of these things. That's so great. Well, if I then have to get rid of it because I didn't remember I had it, well, that makes me mad and makes me stop the process and not trust the process and not want to use the process, right? So instead, it's where, if I needed this thing that I'm surprised to find, I'm not really surprised, I knew it was here, but you know what I mean? If I needed this, where would I look for it first? And then I go, take it there right now. Okay. So it's a gentler, more realistic for what I actually can do process to do that. If I needed this, where would I look for it first? I take it there right now. I'm not saying, do I remember it? I only ask that second question if I never would have gone looking for it. Okay. And then that's when I have to be realistic, because basically, if I have to ask the second question, that means the item needs to go. But it's a way to help me let that thing go, right? Like, if I needed this, would it occur to me that I already had one? And if I insist that yes, I would totally know that I had one, then I have to go back to question number 1 and say, okay, if I knew I had it, then I would go looking for it. Where's the first place where I would look, even if I wasn't sure it was going to be there? I hope that answered that question. Let's see. Okay, there was another question above. I'm trying to find it. Okay. I'm in the midst of packing for a cross-country move all on my own to be out by March 6th. I keep pushing out the date. It will mean downsizing into someone else's. I keep wavering on the best use of my time. And then there was a follow-up question. It is taking more time to dispose of things than I can afford. Okay. Then you need to go with the fastest way to dispose of things, which may be trash more things than, or just, find the place that takes everything. Like, you cannot be picky about where you are donating. And, if some places like, well, we only take clothes, or we only take children's stuff, or we only take this, and we don't, it's like, you got to go to the place that makes it the fastest and the easiest. And it may be something of saying, hey, anybody here have a junk store? And I don't get to do things as a tax write-off. It's going to be like, okay, anybody have a junk store? You want all my stuff? All right. I mean, like, so that it's tough, but yeah, I think that's one of the things about moving is it does force you into that, which is not always a bad thing, right? Okay. Oh, we already did that one. Oh, already did that one. Okay. Already did that one. I'm sorry, y'all. Yay, y'all are giving each other answers. I love it. Okay, when do I move past visible spaces to less visible? I feel like I'm stuck on kitchen, dining room, living room, which kind of look okay, not great, and don't ever move into bedrooms and closets. First of all, do whatever you want to do. Like sometimes if I'm like, oh, wow, I have ended up with a day or a weekend with nothing going on. I'm going to tackle such and such room. You can do that. Like you do whatever you need to do. But as far as if you're trying to follow the visibility rule because the whole house needs the work, try, because here's how the visibility rule works, just the very brief version of it. Start in the most visible space so that you see your progress and then you are inspired. You inspire yourself to declutter again sooner because you're seeing, wow, that made an impact on my home. And the next time that you declutter because you were inspired to declutter before, you go back to that visible space, you get it back under control. And where it maybe took 3 hours the first time, it takes 12 minutes this time. And then you use the time that you have in the next most visible space. And you go, and that's how you gain momentum, maintain progress. Don't end up in that situation where you're like, I worked here and that space got back out of control. And then I worked here and that space got back out of, and then you're just always putting out fires, whatever. So here's what I would say. If you're wanting to do the visibility because you feel like, yes, that's what I need to do, but how do I get past that? Be ruthless. Ruthless means without pity. We answered that in a recent live, didn't we? When I needed to know what that meant. Ruthless means just go farther than you thought you could. Like get rid of more stuff. And because that's what makes a space easy to maintain. That's what makes the space only take 5 to 6 minutes to get back before you move to the next space. That's how you're going to start doing that. It's like really get rid of more, be more ruthless. Okay. How do I get my husband on board with decluttering? You do not do this before you start decluttering. Okay. That is what a lot of people want to do. It makes sense. I'm like, I need everybody to be on board or this is never going to happen. That's actually not true. It happens better if you say, okay, I'm the one watching this woman on the internet on a Tuesday afternoon talk about decluttering. So I'm the one who cares more. I'm the one who is focused in on this. I'm the one who's learning these strategies. Okay. Focus on your stuff and your own stuff and neutral stuff first. Start with your stuff first. Like start getting rid of your stuff before you ever say a word to him about his stuff. Because here's the thing, and I don't know what your situation is, but in a lot of situations, this was my situation. I had major clutter issues, but I could see in my husband's stuff what needed to stay and what needed to go. I was like, oh my word, why are you holding on to that? Meanwhile, I was holding on to all this stuff that didn't make any sense for me to hold on to. And so when I focused on his clutter, it was offensive. Like it made him hold on tighter to his stuff because he was like, why are you fixating on my stuff when you've got all this stuff around here, right? It's because it's so easy to see what is someone else's clutter. So focus on your own stuff. Even if he never gets on board, your house will be better because of you working on your own stuff and neutral stuff. And yet, I hear from, it happened to me. It has happened to so many people. I hear it all the time from people like, I didn't think so. I thought you were wrong. And yet I didn't know what else to do. So I just started with my own stuff and neutral stuff. And it was amazing how the people in my house ended up getting on board. But even if they don't, your house will be better. Any idea how to get ruthless with paper clutter when you do technically have enough room in its place, but can't finish reading or deciding about it and feel vaguely burdened when you notice it? Okay. So, give yourself permission to just look for trash. Okay. Kind of like we talked about before, that letting your brain adjust, that is the value of the trash step. You're making progress while your brain is adjusting, right, to what's actually there to be dealt with. So give yourself permission to say, I I don't know what to do here. It's too overwhelming to me. It is too much. I always get worn out when I start dealing with this. So I'm just going to go through it and just pull out trash and get rid of that, because the vast majority of the time you can take a paper stack from here to here just by getting rid of trash. It's kind of shocking and amazing, right? The other thing I recommend is that you start dealing with your incoming paper first. Okay. Like, do that before you do anything else. Get it down to I have a video on it last year at some time. It might've been like a year ago, August or September. But get it to where you have get it to where you have a very broad file category system. Do that for a while. After you do that, and then you start going through paper, even if you're just looking for trash, you're going to have a much better understanding. It's not going to feel so daunting and overwhelming. The problem is with the daunting and overwhelmingness is you're probably trying to think, well, this probably needs a category for that, and this needs a category. And all of a sudden you've got 47 categories and it's completely overwhelming. How can I get myself to do, excuse me, the second step of mail or paper sort through? I try to schedule it, but that hasn't been successful. I am not a paper person. I mean, I'm just kind of like, like I was talking before, I just try to do everything digitally if I possibly can. So I'm not for sure exactly what you're asking here, but I do think, giving yourself permission to just look for trash, or giving yourself permission to do a small stack at a time and say, I'm going to stop looking at the whole amount of everything, and I'm just going to do a small amount at a time might be helpful. In public spaces, kitchen, my husband and I have different, where would I look for it first? For kitchen stuff, he wants it out and I want it in the cabinet. How do I decide where to put it? So I tend to go with who uses it the most, although it sounds like maybe y'all both use these types of things. Sometimes it's a matter of having two if it's in, completely different places, but it also is that question of, if the countertop is clear, if that's the goal, if a workspace is the goal, like if that's the function of the space is workspace, and so I don't want to have stuff laying out. If this space was clear, then where would you look for it first? And that might help kind of switch that, instead of just where would you look for it first? And he's like, well, on the counter. Well, okay. So if this space was what we want it to be, as far as like, maybe, so adding in that step of like, if this space was functional as a workspace and clear, then where would you look for it first and do that? But I also default to the person, which is me generally on a lot of things, of who is it that's going to get asked? Because I get asked a lot. Mom, where's the such and such? And so I'm like, well, then I get to be the one to put it in the place where I would look for it first. Let's see. How do I declutter handbags and toes that you've collected over the years? Toes. Oh, wow. I'm just kidding. I do have to tell y'all, have you seen, and I follow so many dog things because, I'm a huge dog person. Instagram has started showing me these videos of these fancy meals that people make for their dogs with all these neat little things. My dog gets like regular dog food. Anyway, and they put like a raw chicken foot in it, or a raw rabbit's foot or something like that. And it is so upsetting. And I don't know how the algorithm has decided. Probably because the first time I was like, what is that? And watched the whole thing. And I'm like, no. Anyway, so I'm assuming you haven't actually collected toes. I'm sorry. I know. You know me. If you're watching this, hopefully you know me enough to know. I've collected over the years, but they're not my go-to bags. Whenever I have a trip or some special occasion, they're not expensive, they're fairly cheap, but I don't know why I have a hard time letting them go. I did grow up poor, so I feel like I should keep it because I spent money on them. This is true with everything in my house. It is a struggle to let go of anything and everything. Container concept, right? I'm going to take this off just because you can't see my face. Container concept. Like, that is how we deal with these hard decisions. That is, this is the space that I have to devote to totes. I'm not going to go with should and shouldn't. Would I ever use it? Might I ever need it? Because that lets my brain spin out. And I am really good at my brain spinning out, and it does not serve my house well. And so instead, this is the space that I have to devote to totes that I might use someday. And this space is not needed for the stuff that I do use every day and need to function. Okay. So if you don't have space to keep things that you are not absolutely for sure going to use, then they need to go. But devote, like, let's say this cabinet, this drawer, this hook on the wall, this is the place that I have to devote to that, which means I can keep them. I just can't keep them all, right? Because otherwise that's how my house gets out of control. Because, you're saying that you're dealing with this on a lot of different things. So just use the container concept, blame the container. This is the space that I have. This is the hook that I have. So I can usably, get-to-ably, aesthetically pleasingly hang 3 bags on this hook. Okay. Then I'm going to choose my top 3. And then if you find one that you're like, oh, I liked that one better, great. Which one am I willing to get rid of in order to do that? So you let the container make those hard decisions, because otherwise you would keep them all. I know useful bags are hard too. Totes as opposed to toes. If you're talking about toes, okay. But totes, this is something for me too. And I'm giving y'all all my like upcoming content here, because I am like, have a video for next year, because I'm trying to get those already done. About totes, because I'm like, I had to come to this point where it's kind of one of those things I realized totes are always coming into my life. Like they just do. It's one of those things. I go to something, whatever, and a tote comes into my life. So I try to view it as like a river, the river of totes, or the river of toes, which is a horror movie, flowing through my life. The totes are flowing through my life, which means I can get rid of them because there's always another one coming. So I have a use for it right now. I'm going to keep it, and I use a tote for my Bible study, and I use a tote for this, and I have different, tote that I bring back and forth. Yeah. This is my tote. This is my office tote, right? So like it has a use and blah, blah. And at some point when it's gross, there'll be another tote. Totes show up in my life, and I've already got 10 toes, and I'd like to keep all those. Okay. Sorry, y'all probably think I'm not seeing comments. So y'all are probably all like, what is her problem? Okay. Okay. Oh, I love this question. I haven't yet gotten to the point where I can quickly say this is where this is kept. Doesn't seem to yet be there. Does this mean I'm not in my ideal declutter threshold? I want so bad to get there. Okay. I don't ask myself that question. Instead, I say, where would I look for this first? Where would I look for this first is more effective because there is an answer. That is how I establish the home for something that needs a home that I don't have an established home for, right? So instead, there has to be an answer, and it needs to be instinct. Where would I look for this first? So if there is something that has a home, that's easy, right? Like that's already done on its own. I'm not asking myself any questions. I'm just taking it to its own. But when I get to that stuff where I'm like, okay, this is stuff where it doesn't have a home, but okay, where would I look for this first? That's the question. So make sure you're asking that question correctly, because this is where this was kept implies that I need that it is already established, that I need to be confident that it's going to be there, that I take all of that out because I didn't have that, and say, where would I look for this first? That is now its home. And I let that be an instinct. If I'm analyzing, if I'm thinking too much, I'm doing it wrong. And I need to be like, no, literally, if I was like, where's my headphones? Where do I look for it first? Okay, where's the first place where I go, oh, headphones? I gotta get them really quick. That's it right there. That drawer right there is, or not a drawer, cabinet. That's where I would look first for my headphones. Okay, that becomes its home, and that establishes the home. How do you get kids involved? My 10-year-old has been very difficult. So many toys. Okay, so a couple things here. It's not easy. I mean, because it's relational and it's parenting and it's, there's just all kinds of things, right, involved. So, and parenting is never easy. It doesn't get easier. You have less. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna stop talking. I love my kids. They're the greatest. But seriously, parenting older people or being a parent, how about that? Okay, so how do you get kids involved? The best way to get kids involved is the 5-minute pickup. It takes time. We are not getting 5 minutes worth of work according to what you think should be done in 5 minutes. We are literally saying, I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. We're going to pick things up and put it away for 5 minutes. Even if on this first day, we put away 2 things. It is so important to prove that you're talking 5 minutes. You really do mean 5 minutes. You are not trying to trick them into, I don't like being tricked either, right? That establishing that 5-minute thing over time, it's not going to be tomorrow or the next day, but over time, it's like, oh, okay, well, 5 minutes really is 5 minutes. Okay. She means business, and it's also really not worth resisting because it's 5 minutes, right? So establishing that 5-minute thing, proving that, that you really do mean 5 minutes. And then the whole so many toys part. The goal of the 5-minute pickup is to show that you are at your clutter threshold. Okay. So you declutter, not during the 5 minutes, but you do a decluttering session. And you mention that the 5 minutes that we want to get this down to the point where we will be able to get this picked up and put away in 5 minutes. Okay, like that's our goal in decluttering, is to only have what on a normal day we can get put completely away in 5 minutes, doing the 5 minutes every day, right? So if a 5-minute pickup is not enough time, especially after you've done it a couple days and you're really truly working for, if that's not enough time to get stuff put away, then you need to have less stuff, because your goal is to get down to your child's clutter threshold, not what all they wish they could have, but instead, what can they handle? What can they handle of their stuff in their space? Okay. All right. I am going to stop here because it is time. But this has been fun. I just want to remind you that you can go to askdanakWhite.com and ask questions there in that form, that Google form that puts it into a spreadsheet for me, which I love. Y'all know that. And for me to answer in future lives. Sometimes I answer them on podcasts as well. I do have podcasts, just so y'all know. Just search A Slob Comes Clean wherever you listen to podcasts. I've got like 367 now, I think. And if you need somebody to help you, the coaches listed at declutteringcoaches.com are all my coaches who I have trained in my method. So they speak this language. They talk about the 5-step process. They guide you through that. So I recommend that. And then, of course, there is Patreon, where you can connect with other people who talk about decluttering and home maintenance, home management in the way that we talk about it. So if this clicks with your brain, this is a great place for you to go to connect with other people where you can interact and talk about things using this language that we use here. So it's been really fun, and I will talk to y'all later. Okay, bye.